Okay, Phoebe, I've got you up right here. My first iteration of this week. So I'm not sure if this is the correct file that you've posted here because this is the same iteration from last week, which I gave you a full critique on. So I'm wondering if perhaps you didn't submit an incorrect file. So I'll go ahead and go through this, but I think a lot of this is going to be review. Since I did provide, yeah, this is the same file exactly that I given a full critique on last time. So at the risk of sounding redundant, I'll go ahead and, as I said, a lot of this might be review. But the first thing we see is I've got this open as a PDF, right? So if I come down and hover at the corner, it's going to give us the file size. The file size is 11 by 8.5, but the assignment requires 11 by 17, which means this is oriented in a horizontal format, which means it should be 17 inches wide by 11 inches high. Okay, now the next thing we see is that you've got this kind of color bar, white color bars on the top and the bottom of the composition. And I'm just not real sure how that works. I don't think it looks, I think it looks incomplete. As far as the subhead goes and the headline, you're using the same type for the subhead or the tagline and the headline. I would recommend introducing some typographic variety here by introducing a different typeface for the tagline. The illustration of the diamond on the background is not indicative of X-ray crystallography. It's indicative more of a gemstone. X-ray crystallography and is not associated with fine gems. And this image is kind of pointing in that direction. So there's a miscommunication of information here, as the viewer would take a look at this before reading and think this had something to do with the subject matter, which it doesn't, right? So, and don't forget, there's no illustrations permitted on the front of the poster. All of your communication, all of your meaning must be established typographically, like you've done here. Okay, also, the type on an arc here is not even. And I'm going to take a straight edge, and we'll bring this over. I'm going to place the straight edge underneath the Y on the right-hand side of the configuration, and we can see that it's not even. So that would have to be evened out. I also do not recommend applying stroke to typeface ever. And the reason you don't want to do that is because it doesn't matter where you apply the stroke, whether it's on the middle of the contour line, the outside, or the inside. Either way, it's going to affect the shape of the letters or the negative space associated with the letters and their neighbors. So we don't, most professional designers don't ever, I mean, I haven't stroked type in many, many years, and the last time I did was a very, very specified reason for doing so. In general, you do not want to stroke letter forms in type. Back of the poster is unusual. It's very, very inconsistent in its presentation. This type size this is a serif, a sans serif typeface, while this is a serif typeface and this is a serif typeface. You've got three basic complete different configurations going here, as each one is showing a different type width, a different font, different leading, different kerning. This is a typographic widow. You don't want that. I would recommend somehow combining these into one type block and assembling your type accordingly. As far as the type goes itself, I'm seeing an unusual right here. The type in your timeline, as well as this type and possibly this type, looks like it has been distorted. That is probably due to the fact that it was placed here and then resized. The type block was resized. If you do resize anything, be sure to hold that shift key down. It will constrain the original aspect ratio, the original proportions. Right now, all of this type looks like it's been stretched vertically while not constraining the horizontal proportions. That's why all of these letter forms look tall and skinny. Do you see what I'm saying? Really, really important. This is all really important stuff and quite realistically could affect the final outcome of the poster. We have, you need to use, or actually I shouldn't say you need to, I highly recommend you use old style numerals. There is a video tutorial in the announcements on how to set your old style numerals. That should be a superscript TH right there. And then also all of your numerals should be set at old style. That requires open type capabilities in the font you've chosen. If the typeface you have chosen does not have open type capabilities, you want to select all the numerals and reduce them by a point size. Also, if you have capital letters like AF right here, that would be indicative of small caps. You want to select those, reduce those by a point size. Go through all of your writing, JD right there, all of your writing everywhere where there's numbers, reduce them. Here's a B12, is it interesting? There you would just reduce that whole thing by 1 point size. Same thing with the first and the 3D. 3D, that's the same thing there. Okay, let's come back here. That should be an N dash right there. That's separating a span of numbers. That's indicative of N dash. That's N as in Nancy. And again, that's a typographic widow. We want to adjust that out. I would adjust your rags. Again, there's another video tutorial in the announcements area on how to adjust your rags, but you want to avoid this kind of really drastic difference between the longest line and the shortest line, excluding the last line, of course. But that's just a really just too great of a difference. And then these regs are okay, but you want to work out that little swoop right there. These regs are great right here, but this little swoop right here, you want to work that out. And again, that's all covered in the announcement on adjusting your regs. Your margins aren't even. In other words, this margin is this type is right up to the edge of the page on this side, but on this side, you've got a decent margin. So watch your margins. As far as the timeline itself goes, again, as I said, I would reconfigure the type, but this isn't a timeline. A timeline is basically an infographic, and if you go through a lot of your peers' examples in the class, you'll see great examples of timelines. This is basically just a chronological listing of events. So I would recommend that somehow you create an interesting visual graphic as your timeline. It's a really good idea to try to use visual correspondence from the front to the back of the poster. So for example, these little configurations right here, they're not used in the front, so there's no visual correspondence here. It's just so far the viewer just doesn't know what this configuration is or what it has to do with X-ray crystallography. Do you see what I'm saying? So everything should point to something in terms of establishing meaning. Okay, I know I gave you a lot, and again, a lot of this is review because this is the same file that I critiqued last week. So I think it's really important that you go ahead and address these because, as I said, these are going to affect the outcome of the poster itself. So I highly recommend that you go ahead and make those adjustments before you submit your final submission. If you have any questions or you need help, feel free to let me know. I'll be glad to help you out. But at the very least, I'd like to see, I know I gave a lot, I threw a lot at you in the last 8 minutes or so, but I really think that all of the things I mentioned are really going to help the presentation. All right, again, any questions, please get with me as soon as possible. Thank you very much.